Thank you, Andreas. I'm happy that I was able to pronounce your name. Okay, well, how's everyone feeling? Good? Yeah? We're excited for the break. Yes, let's do it. Yeah. We're excited for the breakout sessions too, because we will have opportunities to ask each other questions about all the amazing and fascinating concepts that we are tackling today. Well, our next speaker is Michael J. Paulus Jr. is University Librarian, Assistant Provost for Educational Technology, and Director and Associate Professor of Information Studies at Seattle Pacific University. His administrative, teaching, and scholarly interests focus on the future of information and communication technologies, especially as they relate to higher education, libraries, work, and ethics. He is a regular contributor to the Patheos blog Digital Wisdom and a founding member of AI and Faith. So please let's welcome Michael J. Paulus.
Thank you for that introduction and for our conference host. This is really a unique opportunity to get together and discuss topics that we don't always find easy venues for discussing. So I'd like to start by pointing to a keyword in my subtitle there, and that is notes. My primary goal with this presentation is to lay down a foundation for thinking about ourselves, our digital selves theologically. But I think I have to do a little bit of work making the case that we have digital selves. So I want to start by talking about this Victorian satirical novella called Flatland. I would ask if any of you have heard of it by raising hands, but it's kind of hard to see a few hands. Oh, actually, nice. So a number of you have. It's a lovely little story. And it's about how different types of intelligent beings live in different dimensions. So, and their consciousness and their forms are limited to these different dimensions. So those who live in point land, no dimension. Those who live in blind land, 1 dimension, 2 lands, or 2 dimensions flat land, and then 3 dimensions space land. And so what's interesting is that the narrator of this work, a square, has to try to get his readers to think about what it would be like for someone in Flatland to become aware of a 3rd dimension. So he uses the example of a sphere. As a sphere descends into Flatland, it starts as a point, it expands to a circle, and then contracts again before disappearing. And the Flatlanders would have no conception of the solidity of the sphere or of its existence prior to or after it passes through their plane. So because of the creative exploration of multiple dimensions, Flatland is something that does show up on a number of syllabi across the disciplines, from math to theology, and maybe that's how some of you have come to be aware of the text. But I think it's a helpful resource for thinking about how our lives are being changed in the digital age. Are we, like the 2-dimensional beings in Flatland, becoming aware of how our reality is opening up to a broader dimension called digital? In Flatland, a stranger from the 3rd dimension says, "All that you speak of is solid, by which you mean enclosed on 4 sides, your houses, churches, your very chests and safe, even your insides and stomachs, all lie open and exposed to my view." So imagine a stranger from the digital dimension saying something similar. "All that you speak of is solid, by which you mean defined by physical limits, your houses, etc., all lie open and exposed to my view." So we are living through a profound period of technological change. It's so profound we're not even sure what to call it yet. Digital transformation, the 4th age, the 4th industrial revolution, the 4th revolution are all descriptors that have been suggested. And what each of these have in common is a focus on how autonomous, intelligent technologies are changing our lives and world. Over the last 100,000 years or so, our species has evolved from users of simple stone tools to creators of increasingly complex ideas, cities, information and communication technologies, and artificial intelligence systems. And at the foundation of our emerging technological environment is data. Big digital data about the details of our daily lives, about our economy, and about the physical world. In his recent book, brand new book, Tools and Weapons, Brad Smith, the president at Microsoft, notes that while data has always been important to society, it has never played the role it does today. Every aspect of human life is fueled by data. And with AI, we are doing more with it than we ever have before. This new attention to data has created a whole new area of ethical inquiry, of data, algorithms, and corresponding practices, so that we can promote good values and protect vulnerabilities. And these new values and vulnerabilities associated with data mean that we have a new relationship with data. The broadening concept of privacy provides some insight into how this relationship is emerging. 100 years ago, initially, privacy was really about freedom from physical intrusion in personal property or spaces. In the 60s, privacy expanded to include freedom from interference into one's personal affairs, one's body, thoughts, behaviors, and communications. But since the 70s, as technology has evolved, the concept of privacy has continued to evolve along with it. And now we have the concept of informational privacy, the ability to access and control personal information, how our information is collected, processed, disseminated, and maybe treated. And we are beginning to think more about how data is connected to our identity. If our understanding of identity includes who we are, who we think we are, and what others, or who others think we are, then data about us shapes all of these. Our social self, our self-conception, and our personal identities. Further, as digital technologies become increasingly integrated into our lives, part of how we think and part of what we do, we see data as part of our more porous, digitally extended selves. Data constitutes part of us. Ontologically, we think and talk about it as we would talk about our body, our head, our hand, the data. Now, near the beginning of the HBO BBC miniseries, Years and Years, a teenager named Bethany comes out as transhuman and tells her parents she wants to live forever as information, to be data. And this becomes an interesting subplot of the show. Can we be reduced to data? In a sense, we already are data and information, but according to the idea of dataism as articulated by Yuval Harari, life consists of and is reducible to data and algorithms. Now, if you believe this, you may imagine a future like Max Tegmark's Life 3.0. We can upgrade life to a form that is somehow substrate independent and be freed from our evolutionary shackles for biology. There are options beyond data outputs, though. In her book, Cyborg Cells, Jen Thwaite recovers the term cyborg to point to alternative visions for enhanced human futures that have more continuity with our present embodied experience of existence. Luciana Floridi's notion of humans as informationally embodied organisms, or inforgs as he calls them, also remains grounded in the physical world. But this is a world being re-engineered and re-ontologized by information technologies into what he calls hemisphere. And as the dualism between our on and offline lives collapses into what he calls on life, perhaps one can see the familiar circle of information becoming a sphere, this sphere. Now, some views of enhancement may seem more like augmentation than amputation than augmentation. For example, the bit world, imagined in Neil Stephenson's latest book, Fall. In this story, where we figure out how to scan and simulate brains, and people gain immortality or death after death. But the digital life is more like a digital library full of sort of living books that contain a potency of life. And at the end of Years and Years, the dying character being digitized points to the limits of such digital representations. She confesses that we're more than data. It's the relationships and the love they create which transform recorded memories into living experiences. Now, A little bit of theological orientation to this. The theological responses to the question about our digital identity seem to fall roughly into three different areas of emphasis. There's first the protological approach, which focuses on original creation. Jacob Schatzer's book, Transhumanism and the Image of God, I think falls into this category. There's what might be called an incarnational response, and it focuses on Christ's person and work. I think Craig Gay's Modern Technology and the Human Future is aligned with this approach. But there's a third eschatological approach that focuses on teleological transformation. And Michael Burdett's book, Eschatology and the Technological Future, I think is a helpful foundation for thinking in this way. Now, each approach has important insights. The protological approach, however, tends to lead to a focus on the origin of our species, around what could be called our first information revolution. Harari, interestingly, calls this the tree of knowledge mutation. The incarnational approach drops us in the middle of the third information revolution, and we sort of get stuck with Jesus in the first century. The eschatological approach, however, directs us to a time after all revolutions. And the focal image for the eschatological view is New Jerusalem, a technologically complex image of the full realization of our ultimate telos, the cosmic scope of the incarnation, and what it means in the end to be made in the image of God, creative, relational, contemplative. I believe the opportunity of our unique moment in history is to see our present in a way living into the future as open to the coming new creation that includes the new digital dimension of our lives. Thank you.